right, so for our section this evening, the kind of what in the world segment that we're doing tonight, I want to spend some time dealing with what happened with the Supreme Court last Friday morning when they released their Dobbs decision, and it has all these consequences for abortion and Roe v. Wade and so forth. There's so much head-exploding craziness going on about this issue. I'd like to walk through this and make some sense of it. I've given you these large slides. Okay? What I've given you there has two sides. I especially wanted to give this to you in color and large enough to read so that you would have this last slide that we'll get to here in just a second. But I saw this online, and part of my brain goes, "Oh, this is perfect for Tuesday night." And then all kinds of other things came up, and I thought, well, I'm just going to leave this to the side. And then I got email, from people in the church saying, "Hey, man, have you seen this?" And it has some more information with it. And so while Heather and I were having lunch today, I go to the website and I started reading through this. I'm like, oh my goodness. Then we watch a video of theirs that they have on their website. And I thought, okay, this deserves a little bit of time and attention. The Satanic Temple is an actual organization. They call themselves a religion. They accept donations. Their reaction to the Supreme Court decision, was to offer people a religious exemption if your state makes abortion illegal. So they will apply for religious exemption for what they call their reproductive religious right. So it is their reproductive religious act. So they actually have, and this was the video that Heather and I watched, they have a religious ceremony that their people go through while they have an abortion to reaffirm their values and commitments and so forth. So if you go through anything on their website, it is religious language from beginning to end. It's a really curious organization because they also say we do not believe that Satan exists. So they don't believe in the, as they put it, they don't believe in the Christian version of Satan. They believe that Satan stands for certain values in this world that they want to uphold. So for not believing in Satan, this is their logo, and their website is loaded with satanic language. If you know me and Heather, you know how this works. I start going through their website, and Heather goes, "Oh, don't put that on your don't bring that up. Don't bring that up." They have a shop where you can go and buy all of their wares, including a statue of two children learning at the knees of a seated demon, with the pentagrams all over the place. So for people who say they don't believe in Satan, C.S. Lewis in the Screwtape Letters said, Satan does not need people to believe that he exists as long as they do whatever he wants them to do, right? So that's what's going on with the Satanic Temple. I gave you this because I wanted you to see some of this language. TST stands alone because we're the only entity that can assert a religious liberty claim that terminating a pregnancy is a central part of a religious ritual that encourages self-empowerment and affirms bodily autonomy. So they've actually concocted a religious ritual. This next paragraph, though, this means that the imposition of waiting periods and mandatory counseling is akin to demanding a waiting period in counseling before one can be baptized or receive communion. Clearly, that would be a violation of religious liberty. What that sentence says is that abortion is the same thing as Christian sacrament. So they say that abortion is our sacrament. It is our religious right. Therefore, you cannot demand a 24-hour waiting period. You cannot demand counseling in your laws. We can apply for an exemption to all of those things. Then they go on in this last little paragraph here of this section of the website. And this is all just on the front page of the website. You don't have to dig around for all this stuff. We're going to also be suing the FDA, the last sentence there, for unrestricted religious access to these two drugs. Those two drugs are what we know of as RU-486. So these are the abortion drugs. So they're suing the FDA, or plan on suing the FDA, for unfettered, over-the-counter access to abortion drugs if you have a religious exemption. You don't need a prescription, you don't need counseling, you don't need, whatever the case may be, given, that kind of prescription. So that's their reaction to what happened on Friday. And they may not think they're worshiping Satan, but not everybody knows they're worshiping Satan when they're worshiping Satan. It's just kind of the way that it goes. You cannot apply for a religious exemption to murder another human being. Yeah. They promise they can, and you can donate to their cause. We'll get to a handful of the pro-choice arguments that have been floating around, especially since last Friday morning. There's a whole gaggle of them, including that what is in the womb is not a human person, but we'll get to a few others. I give you this because this is a wonderful little map. This is on, how many of you have heard of the Family Research Council in D.C.? It's a wonderful organization. This is on their website, frc.org. And so it's actually an interactive map of the United States, state by state. You click on one of the states, and they will give you, like I've given you there on the left, a synopsis of the laws in that state regarding abortion. And they've given you kind of a color-coded sense. And you'll notice that the state of Colorado is one of 6 states that have effectively no guardrails on abortion. Now, the way laws work both in the U.S. and around the world, that makes the state of Colorado one of the most liberal or permissive states when it comes to abortion in the world. Not just in the United States, but in the world. So on this map, Colorado does not protect unborn life. There's no legal authority that places a limit in this state. And this is really interesting. Now, some of you may remember, we talked about this briefly a few weeks ago. This law was passed not that long ago, the Reproductive Health and Equity Act. And any law that has a name like that, there's shenanigans. There's just shenanigans inside of that bill. So I find this powerfully ironic. There are no restrictions on who can perform an abortion. As I've understood the explanation of this bill, there's also no restriction on where an abortion can take place. Now, the reason I find this ironic is as long as I've been listening to the arguments in favor of legalizing abortion, is that if you legalize abortion, we're not going to have any more back alley coat hanger abortions. What's ironic about the law in the state of Colorado is that now you can legally perform back alley coat hanger abortions, right? It's just absolutely insane. One of the things that goes on with the pro-choice argumentation in the pro-choice world right now is utter and complete irrationality. And we'll get to some of that a little bit later on, make it a little bit more explicit. No conscience protections for individuals or institutional providers. That's a really big deal in the medical world. It's actually codified for a lot of hospitals inside of a lot of states. If an individual doctor or hospital does not want to perform a certain procedure, they have this conscience right to reject that procedure, and that individual goes to another doctor, goes to another institution. And so that person can kind of shop around until they find the doctor who wants to perform that operation, or that procedure, whatever it is. The state of Colorado says you can't refuse it now. I don't care what your religious beliefs or conscientious objections are. You can't refuse it in the state of Colorado. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal. So I gave you that because I wanted to make sure you saw that and you know where it comes from. frc.org is the website. Lots of great stuff on a lot of things on their website, but this particular map is up there. I want to spend a little bit of time going over this. This is front and back. I've gotten a few questions over the last few days about what happened, why it happened. And so I want to talk about this path from Roe v. Wade to Dobbs, Roe to Dobbs. Dobbs is the name of the case. Dobbs v. Jackson is the name of the case that was released on Friday morning. The Supreme Court has been releasing a lot of their cases over the last few weeks. They released, I think, 5 last Friday morning, and one of them was Dobbs v. Jackson. And as soon as it was realized that this case, which is the one that was leaked, if you're aware of these things, this was actually leaked a while ago, and it didn't change in substance. So when it came out, everybody knew what this case did. It overturned Roe v. Wade, and then kablooey. So I want to talk a little bit about what that means, what happened in the Roe case. There turns out to be a constellation of a handful of Supreme Court cases that have created the abortion laws in our nation since 1973 when Roe came out. I'm going to deal with 3 of them tonight. There's at least 5 or 6 that are actually significant when it comes to law and so forth. But these 3 are big, and I'm giving you Roe v. Wade, and the third one we're going to talk about is called Planned Parenthood versus Casey. The reason I'm giving you Casey is that if you actually read a thoughtful article on this, it tells you that the case overturned Roe and Casey. Roe and Casey, Roe and Casey. That's the language that you hear all the time. So I want us to at least have a sense of what that means. All right, Roe v. Wade, 1973. Most folks may not realize, unless you were kind of aware of the situation in 1973 or have paid attention to it, that prior to the decision in 73, abortion was illegal in 30 states and legal with restrictions in others. So several states had already made abortion illegal. Some of them completely illegal, some of them illegal with a handful of exceptions, medical exceptions, things like that. In other states, it wasn't necessarily completely legal, but it was legal in some circumstances. So that's the state-by-state landscape before the Roe v. Wade case. Roe, which is a pseudonym, it's like saying John Doe, Jane Doe. This was Jane Roe. She was anonymous for a long time. She actually publicly came out several years ago. I cannot remember her name off the top of my head, but everybody learned who she was. But her name at the time, a pseudonym, her name was Roe. She claimed that she had been raped, got pregnant, and because of the laws of the state of Texas, she was being forced to give birth to this child. It was illegal to have an abortion, even in the case of rape in 1973 in Texas. Well, it turns out she wasn't raped, but her contraception failed. She claims she was raped, and that's where this case comes from. So Roe ends up doing a couple of really interesting things that created problems as soon as it came out. So the Roe decision, you can read all of these decisions online if you're interested in reading these things. The Roe decision does not say there is a constitutional right to abortion. It does not say that. It explicitly says that people have what they call a right to privacy, and they use that phrase, and they make use of the 14th Amendment and a few other things inside of the Bill of Rights. A right to privacy means that a woman has a right to make a medical decision, including the decision to abort a child. So all of this language that we hear now, that all these rights have been taken away, and how many of you have heard this or seen this? Guns have more rights than women now. Right? This is the kind of thing that's going on now. No, there's never been a constitutional right to abortion, but it's been jimmied into our law under the right to privacy phrase that the Supreme Court concocted in the Roe v. Wade case. And it just becomes entrenched in our culture and in our law. The decision of Roe v. Wade effectively overruled every state's laws on abortion. So it is true that eventually Roe v. Wade made abortion legal in all 50 states. So there's not a law on the U.S. books that makes abortion legal. It's just the way this ruling works that you cannot restrict abortion, or if you do, you're suddenly going to find yourself in a legal quagmire. So the reasoning that Roe v. Wade uses is important. Right to privacy, which a lot of people from the very beginning have said, this is a joke, this is made up, it doesn't exist, the ruling is wrong. One of the other things that Roe v. Wade did that's really important to this whole issue is it broke pregnancy up into trimesters, and it handled trimesters differently. So in the first trimester, they said it was still okay for states to consider abortion illegal. But beginning with the second trimester and further on through all the way to birth, states and doctors and individuals could make decisions to legalize abortion. Some of the language that they use.
You said first trimester they could make it illegal?
Yes. No, you're right. First trimester, legal. Second and third trimester, they can make decisions about it. That's right. Thank you. Want to make sure I get that one right. Yeah. Some of the language that they used wasn't just legal language, it was scientific language. The second and third trimesters were what they called, especially the third trimester, is what they called the time in which the fetus was viable outside of the womb. So you could restrict abortion once a fetus was viable outside of the womb. Well, science and technology have changed since 1973, pushing viability closer and closer to conception. So there are several things inside of the Roe decision that over time have just eroded, but it's been entrenched in court cases and in our law. In the same year, 1973, a second case came out that most people don't know about, but it radically changed the way abortion works. You've got Roe v. Wade, and then you have Doe v. Bolton. In Doe v. Bolton, a couple of important things happen. In Doe v. Bolton, the court ruled that a state can limit abortions only if they have what's called a compelling interest to do so. The reason that's important is it changes the burden of proof. If a woman comes to a doctor or a hospital and wants an abortion, you could say that up to that point, she has to prove to that doctor or hospital that she should be able to get an abortion. So the burden of proof is on her, so to speak. Doe v. Bolton says now she comes to the doctor or hospital, but the state now has to prove that she can't have an abortion. So the state needs to have a compelling interest in the life of that child, that unborn child, to restrict abortion. So you kind of feel the sea change with that decision in Doe v. Bolton. The other great big thing that happened, Roe v. Wade talked a lot about the health of the mother, and it's assumed in that vocabulary that you're talking about the physical health of the mother. Is her life in danger if she carries this child to term and gives birth? Doe v. Bolton reinterpreted the language of the health of the mother as psychological and emotional health as well. So that just opens the door wide open. All kinds of reasons for and justifications for abortion inside of our legal system. Well, there are a few others that do different things like that along the way. The next big one happened in 1992, Planned Parenthood versus Casey. It was a big deal for a lot of reasons, including a lot of pro-life organizations believed that this was the case that could overturn Roe v. Wade. It didn't. It was actually kind of a disappointment for just about everybody. So here's what is at issue in Planned Parenthood versus Casey. A 24-hour waiting period with information given to the mother. So the law in the state of Pennsylvania, which is where this case came from, required these things. And Planned Parenthood is fighting this, saying these things are illegal. 24-hour waiting period for information given to the mother, parental consent for a minor, and notification for the husband. So that's what was in that case. The court struck down some and upheld others, but continued to use the right to privacy language. So that's part of what connects the Planned Parenthood versus Casey case with the Roe case. So that's why the language Roe and Casey is in what happened Friday morning, the Dobbs case. So where that put us before last Friday morning, before the Dobbs case, abortion is considered legal in all 50 states with few to no restrictions unless states pass laws in the face of or in spite of Roe v. Wade. So that's exactly what happened in the state of Mississippi, and that's exactly why this case made its way to the Supreme Court. The state of Mississippi passed a law, the Gestational Acts of Mississippi, I can't remember the exact name, but except for like medical emergencies and things like that, it made abortion illegal up to 15 weeks. Yeah, made it illegal after 15 weeks. Sorry, I don't know why I keep getting this turned around. Made it illegal after 15 weeks. So that gets pushed back on, saying what got pushed back on was states are not allowed to make law about abortion cases, about abortion law, because Roe v. Wade and all of this court precedent has said states can't do that. That power has been removed from states. Mississippi pushes back by saying, well, as a matter of fact, this should be a states' rights issue. So it is not a federal issue because Roe and Casey are invalid. There's no such thing as a right to abortion in the Constitution. So as soon as this case made its way to the Supreme Court, immediately a lot of pro-life organizations said this is the case, because this case was directly aimed at Roe and Casey. There's no constitutional right to abortion. The right to privacy is made up. So, because of the makeup of the court now, you've got a lot of these people who are sympathetic to that. Yes, ma'am. I would assume that they have that consent, but what the law was saying originally was, if there is a marriage and a husband involved with this, then he needs to be informed of the wife's decision to actually abort this child and give consent to it. So yeah, these consent laws, it just kind of got blown up in all of this. So in the Dobbs v. Jackson case, the way the case stands right now, if you wanted to print it out and read it, I think it's only 212 pages, so it is long. But the first 2 or 3 pages are all you really need. So after some brief description of the actual legality of the case itself, the first real paragraph of the decision says, this is what the Supreme Court has decided. So it says, we hold this. So this is the first paragraph of the decision. Held, meaning the Supreme Court has decided this. The Constitution does not confer a right to abortion. Roe and Casey are overruled, and the authority to regulate abortion is returned to the people and their elected representatives. So that's profound and powerful stuff. That overturns 50 years of abortion rulings because it's all based on that logic that came through the Roe and Casey cases. For them to say as simply as this, Roe and Casey are overturned, is powerful stuff. But you'll notice what's not in that paragraph and is not in the rest of the ruling. This does not make abortion illegal. It overturns those Supreme Court precedents, which is still a gigantic deal. So I mentioned the case originated in Mississippi, and a little bit of background on that. So here's what Dobbs does and does not do. Dobbs does not end abortion, but it does end Roe. So people's heads are exploding, and rightfully so. They just don't all know why their heads should be exploding. They're exploding for some crazy reasons, but it opens the door for states to do really interesting things. So now abortion laws are a state-by-state decision. The little map that you have on the right there tells you, the light green shows you which states have right now what are called trigger laws. So several states had trigger laws. So a trigger law is this. So sometime in the recent past, a state legislature has passed a law making abortion illegal in their state or some version of illegal in their state. But you can't pass that law because Roe v. Wade exists, and that's the legal precedent. You can't pass that law. So it's like putting a gift under the Christmas tree on Thanksgiving Day that says you cannot open until Christmas. Some of those legislatures probably never thought Christmas would come, but they passed those laws anyway. Christmas came. Roe v. Wade is overturned. And almost immediately, several governors opened up that little gift that was sitting on their desk and signed those laws. And literally, like that, abortion becomes illegal in their state or severely restricted in their state, either overnight or over a period of time. One of the things that's interesting about this is that in a couple of these states, Planned Parenthood has already closed all of their clinics. I mean, that's fast. We're talking about less than a week. Now, what's ironic about Planned Parenthood closing all of their clinics in a state that has made abortion illegal? What happened to all the health care? Because Planned Parenthood's line for years has been that abortion is only 3% of our income. Everything else we do is mammograms and family planning and support and so forth. Now, all of the finances have told you they're lying to you, but that's their line. So the moment abortion's illegal, they still have 97% of their work to do, right? No. Their work is gone. And so, closed down instantaneously. So the consequences, even though this ruling does not make it illegal, the consequences have been profound already and will continue to be profound on both ends of the spectrum, right? So you've got all these states with trigger laws and then all these other states that are becoming sanctuary states for abortions. Companies and now major cities in red states, or these trigger law states, that are saying if any of our city employees want to have an abortion in our state, we will pay for their travel to the neighboring state so that they can have an abortion, right? So, the reactions are going to be really stunning all the way around. The backside of that page, I want to deal with this just a little bit. It's been a long time since we've done this kind of thing exactly. But some of the reactions to the Dobbs case, the pro-choice arguments that are out there, the things that you hear the most. Now, if you follow this, you hear all kinds of other things as well, but these are kind of the big three right now that get thrown out there, that you hear on cable news, that, those crazy relatives that you have who got really angry at this, these are the arguments they're using online. So I want to think through these for just a couple of minutes. And the first one is the bumper sticker, my body, my choice. Right? So the argument is, if I want to get a tattoo, no one can tell me no, it's my body, it's my choice. If I want plastic surgery, my body, my choice, I can do this. If I want an abortion, my body, my choice. You don't, just like having plastic surgery, you have no right to tell me I cannot do this. So I go through these things and I keep telling myself there have to be better pro-choice arguments out there. There's not. These are the arguments who come from their leading thinkers, okay? The people who testify before Congress, the people who write these books, who are PhD tenured academics and are pro-choice. These are inside of their arguments. There are no good pro-choice arguments, but these are the ones that are out there right now. My body, my choice. Well, we know these kinds of things. The fertilized egg instantaneously has DNA that's different than mom. So, yes, maybe she can go through a surgery that tattoos her eyeball, but that eyeball has the same DNA as her right pinky finger, has the same DNA as her heart. Okay? The fertilized egg has different DNA, which immediately makes it a different person. Now, one of the questions is the question that Eric raised at the bottom of it all, the pro-choice argument. When you push them up against the wall, when you take all of their other arguments down, their final argument is it's not a person. It's not a human person, which again is utter logical insanity. It's moral insanity, but that's what it boils down to. My body, my choice. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah, where have you heard that argument before? That they're not real people. This is how concentration camps get justified. That's the kind of moral reasoning that you're dealing with. That's absolutely right. The fetus has and eventually will have, for example, different hair color, eye color, height, and weight than the mother. Just a different person. And in roughly 50% of pregnancies, it's a boy. So a boy and a girl can't be the same person. I don't care what queer theory tells you. They cannot be the same person. What is a woman? Yeah.
Apparently a woman is someone who can have an abortion.
Is someone who can have an abortion.
This is the one defining argument that is hilarious.
Yes.
Really ironic and sad.
Yes.
That apparently the right to an abortion is the defining characteristic of being a woman.
All of a sudden,
We like talking about women a whole lot.
Yeah.
And 3 weeks ago, it's like, well, what is a woman?
yeah.
Well, now we know.
Yep. Yeah, they're not biologists, but man, yes. So, the bottom line is a child in the womb is connected to the mother's body, is dependent upon the mother's body. It is not the same thing as the woman's body. So it is a very emotionally powerful slogan and bumper sticker, but there's nothing true about it on any level at all. I'm interested in trying to figure out how many people who are pro-choice, who are seriously pro-choice, especially the younger they are, if they've ever actually engaged any pro-life argument on an honest level at all. If they've ever even heard a pro-life argument in an honest discussion at all. Because I suspect that fewer and fewer of them have. My body, my choice. Okay, so that's one of them. Here's another one that gets me hot under the collar. Pro-lifers only care about children in the womb. So the implication, the statement often is, especially about Christian pro-lifers, we don't help anyone else and don't care about what happens after birth. So you hear this argument from people who are outside of the church, who just kind of hate the church anyway, or they're angry at the church, they think Christians are evil people. You pro-lifers, you don't care about people on their deathbeds. You don't care about refugees. You don't care about single moms. You don't care about gun violence. You don't care about any of that stuff. You're not really pro-life. All you are is pro-fetus. You hear that argument from outside the church and friends. You hear that argument from inside of the church. More and more people who write Christian theology and write for popular Christian magazines are telling the church, you have to start caring about everybody else through the rest of their lives. Okay, now we've been talking about minds exploding. Mine explodes when I hear that. There is no other organization on the face of the earth that cares more from human beings from conception to death than the Church of Jesus Christ. You imagine every organization that handles not just, birth and abortion issues and post-birth questions, but hospitals, hospice, end-of-life care, foster care, single mother care, teenage pregnancy care, refugee care, and you can extend that list to 30 or 40 different kinds of organizations, all of them. Now think this through for a second with me. All of them started by local churches, denominations, or a group of like-minded Christians. All of them funded entirely by Christians and local churches. Denominations don't have money except churches and Christians give them money. These organizations are funded entirely by Christians, all of them populated by the local church. So Christians who attend their local church also work at Focus on the Family, Life Network, Cook Communications. This is where all of this happens. Now you take all of that in the U.S., you multiply all of those organizations by Every single nation on the face of the earth. And you can say the same thing about every single one of those other organizations. So, when people say that all Christians care about is getting these children born and then they don't care, and even when that comes from inside of the church, oh, if I could punch some people in the face. It's just a bald-faced lie. There's nothing else to call it. Just a bald-faced lie. So again, these are the best arguments that they have. And then here's this one. When I read this sentence, if you understand the words of this sentence, the sentence doesn't make sense. But this sentence gets repeated a lot. Because of the Dobbs decision, because Roe is overturned, miscarriages and ectopic procedures are now illegal because they're the same thing as abortions. Think about that for a second. Miscarriages are the same thing as abortions. I keep seeing this. Guys, I know, I see the looks on your faces. It's the look on my face too. I keep seeing, I didn't see it once. I've seen it dozens of times since Friday morning. Again, people who aren't Christians and people who are Christians, who claim the name of Jesus Christ, are making this argument. And then ectopic pregnancies. We'll talk about that here in just a second. So, thinking through this, critiquing this for just a moment or two, there is no state in the U.S. that considers either of these an abortion. Thus, there are no restrictions on them. They have nothing to do with the Roe case and nothing to do with the Dobbs case. So it's a red herring. And so I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to make everybody angry about this. And it's just, they're not abortions. An abortion is a procedure in which a child in the womb is destroyed and removed from the mother to end the pregnancy. The intention of that procedure is an abortion. The intention of that procedure is to destroy the child, remove it from the womb, and to end the pregnancy. The intention is important because, what we'll get to here in just a minute. Miscarriages are spontaneous acts of a body for several reasons. There's no intent to end the pregnancy with what is actually a miscarriage. An ectopic pregnancy is when a fertilized egg gets implanted in the wrong part of the woman's body, dies, becomes septic, and becomes a danger to the woman's body. According to the Mayo Clinic, okay, so this isn't Pastor Phil's medical textbook that he's writing. This is the Mayo Clinic. An ectopic pregnancy can't proceed normally. The fertilized egg can't survive, and the growing tissue may cause life-threatening bleeding if left untreated. So an ectopic procedure medically is not considered an abortion. The egg is going to die or is going to die or has died and has gone septic. So you are in a lot of cases just saving the mother's life. So the intention of an ectopic procedure is not to end the life of a child, but to protect the life of the mother. Now, why is that important? I'm going to give you this next little line here. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I just get jazzed by this kind of thing. Because of something called the doctrine of double effect. Okay, you've heard of the doctrine of double effect. Some of you have. But most of you have never heard of the doctrine of double effect. But you have been held on the edges of your chairs with the dozens upon dozens of medical dramas and first responder dramas that you've watched over the years, because almost all of them rely on the tension created with the doctrine of double effect. Here's how it works. And it's a core piece of ethical philosophy, the philosophy of ethics. It's a very practical doctrine in medical ethics and other fields as well. Here's how it works. If you do act A, if you perform action A for a good cause, but one of the consequences is B, and B is a bad consequence, you are only responsible for A, you are not responsible for B. Okay, that's the doctrine of double effect. The second, or the double effect, you're not responsible for. You're responsible for the first effect and not the second. Okay, that's the basic doctrine of double effect. Here's how you have watched this play out in medical dramas for years and years and years. The patient that everyone has become sympathetic with is dying, is in a very difficult position. Half of the family wants to keep them alive as long as possible. The other half think it's time to end their lives. The doctors and nurses are at odds about this, and they're going round and round about what to do with this patient. Eventually, somebody sticks a morphine pump next to that patient to alleviate the pain that she is in. And over time, they keep turning up the dial on the morphine pump. When you give the first dose of morphine, you're alleviating pain, but the pain keeps getting worse. So you keep raising the level of morphine. What eventually happens when you raise morphine too far? They stop breathing and the patient dies. Are you responsible for alleviating pain, or are you responsible for killing the patient? Okay. Generally speaking, now I know these are complicated areas, but generally speaking, you've done procedure A for good. If B results and is bad, you're responsible for A and not for B. That's the general sense of the doctrine of double effect. So an ectopic procedure saves the mother's life, or saves her health at the very least, is not intended to perform an abortion. So they're not considered abortions the way a normal abortion procedure is created. So now you can impress your friends and family and neighbors with the doctrine of double effect. It's a great phrase to say out loud anyway. But these are three of the big ones that just keep being repeated over and over and over. And I thought I just wanted to talk some of this through to give us a sense of what's being said, a sense of how to deal with it, how to react to it. That last little point that we have at the bottom is what I went through on Sunday morning. The church's reaction: we engage the world armed with both truth and love. The truth of the sanctity of every single life, including all of those children inside of the womb, and then love as well, because a lot of young women are in very difficult situations. That's why we support organizations like Life Network. And some people in this church have actually spent a lot of their volunteer time at places like Life Network because we actually care about this kind of stuff. So we engage the world in both truth and love. And while there are some who have decided to make their case through violence or the threats of violence, the church doesn't do that kind of thing. The church does it differently. So we work through prayer. And people who've been working on this pro-life cause for 50 years now have talked about how much time they've prayed and worked and networked. But they've been praying for a very long time for Roe to be overturned. Roe gets overturned. Through persuasion instead of violence. We want hearts to be persuaded. We don't want people to be coerced in the long run. We want hearts to be changed and to go through the process. We don't firebomb. Crazies do things like this. Pregnancy centers are getting firebombed now. We don't turn around and do the same. That's not what the church is supposed to do. We go through the process, right? So this is how the church responds and continues to press forward. And my goodness, does the state of Colorado have some work to be done when it comes to this issue. One of the things, it bothered me, I failed to mention it on Sunday morning. Because we do support Life Network, I received a request from them Friday afternoon for financial support and prayer because they had received some threats and had to spend some more money on security for their pregnancy centers and for their main sort of location. So I was able, out of our missions fund, because of how generous this church is with missions, to just turn around and immediately give them a generous donation. Life Network is very good. They got back with me and they said since Friday, and this was Friday night, Saturday morning, I got this note back from their director, Rich. We had him here about a year and a half ago. He said even on Friday, just here in Colorado Springs, they had 2 and possibly a 3rd moms who had not just decided for life instead of an abortion because of the pregnancy centers, but had actually given their lives to Christ on Friday. So that's the kind of stuff that you do this for, right? These are the kinds of people that you support. You look like you were jumping in there. So. Pleased. Yes, pleased. Very good stuff. Very good stuff. All right, so that is not available online. We can make that available online. And we'll have some more copies of this. I just kind of want to have that little overview available to you guys. Some of you may have understood some about Roe, but you probably never heard about Doe v. Bolton or heard Planned Parenthood versus Casey, and had some more of this information. So I hope this is helpful, and I hope this helps explain some things. Yes, ma'am. So this is another issue that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but studies continue to show that post-abortion, the rates of certain other physical and psychological trauma rise. And it's connected to this history of abortion. So yeah, there are all kinds of reasons to stand up for life and against the legality of abortion. So, yeah. Yeah, the one happens and the other one happens as a result of it.
So is Planned Pregnancy engaged in psychological counseling and post-abortion?
So is Planned Parenthood doing post-abortion trauma counseling? Yeah. I'm going to hazard a guess and say no. But you know who does? Life Network and other organizations like it. They'll support a woman. Some of you may know this already. If a girl makes the decision for life, they will actually walk with that girl and the father, if he is in the picture, for the first full 2 years of that child's life. All kinds of counseling and gifts and, the whole process. And they also do post-abortion counseling. So if someone has had the decision to have an abortion, they will go through the long period of counseling with them. They do education inside of schools as well. It is a very holistic approach to this issue, which is one of the reasons why I've just been a fan since I really first came aware of what they do. And I know there are lots of organizations out there that do all that kind of stuff as well. No matter what your angry atheist relatives tell you online. Christians really do these kinds of things.